The Zorath Collective was an old empire. For thousands of years, their fleets had moved through the stars with calm authority, guarding their borders and expanding their reach. They were masters of scanning technology. To them, no secret in space was hidden for long. Every new species they met was quickly measured, categorized, and either ignored or absorbed. It was routine work for their patrol fleet stationed on the edge of the Nyroth sector. Board officers often joked that the scanners knew the story of a new vessel before its crew even noticed the Zorath. So when the long-range sensors detected a new arrival at the edge of the system, no one felt concern. Admiral Sarach stood in the center of the command chamber, his tall frame wrapped in the flowing silver cloak of his rank. His eyes, dark and calculating, flicked across the holographic display of the unidentified vessel. It was enormous, larger than most carriers the Zorath deployed. Its design was strange, harsh angles, armored surfaces layered like shields, and no graceful curves that Zorath engineers preferred. "Begin a deep scan," Sarach ordered in his calm voice. The science crew moved quickly. Energy beams invisible to the eye stretched out from the Zorath ship, brushing across the mysterious vessel like probing fingers. Usually results came back in seconds, charts, graphs, and clear outlines of weapons, engines, and technology. But this time, the information was slow, fragmented. Lieutenant Aerith, the chief scanner operator, frowned. His mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral, the readings are unusual. I will need time to filter the data." Sarach narrowed his eyes. "Unusual? Define unusual." "The energy signatures are conflicting. The armor is thicker than anything I have ever recorded. Whole layers of metal upon metal, reinforced with unknown compounds. It is as if the ship was designed to survive destruction itself." A low murmur spread across the command chamber. Zorath ships were designed with efficiency and elegance, meant to glide through battle with minimal waste. This alien ship was a brute, every surface screaming of purpose. "Perhaps it is primitive," one officer suggested. "A species that builds without understanding balance." Aerith shook his head. "No, Commander. This design is not primitive. It is deliberate. Every choice in its construction suggests caution, preparation, and fear." The word hung in the air like a shadow. As more data came in, the hologram of the vessel sharpened. It bore no familiar emblems, no symbols of known alliances. The engines were powerful, but configured in ways that suggested long endurance rather than quick strikes. Its hull bristled with weapons, missile bays, plasma cannons, railgun batteries, far more than necessary for a defensive patrol ship. The officers leaned closer, whispering among themselves. "Such firepower is wasteful. Perhaps it is ceremonial, built to look strong but empty within. Or perhaps it is a fortress." Admiral Sarach raised his hand, silencing the chamber. "Continue the scan. We will know the truth." Hours passed. The Zorath fleet drifted silently, their attention locked on the lone alien vessel. It did not move, did not respond, almost as if it were asleep. The scanners crawled over its surface and deeper into its core. Then the crew discovered something that made their spines stiffen. "Admiral," Aerith said softly, "there are scars." "Scars?" Sarach echoed. "Yes, impact marks. Burned plating. Entire sections replaced with newer material. The ship has fought before, many times, yet it still endures. No vessel survives this much damage unless it was built to suffer war endlessly." The room fell silent. The Zorath were warriors in their own way, but their battles were rare, often won through intimidation or superior technology. This alien ship told a different story. Constant conflict. A design philosophy born not from glory but survival. Curiosity sharpened into unease. The Zorath officers watched as more fragments of information poured into the display. Beneath the thick armor, massive compartments suggested storage for supplies and weapons. Hidden energy spikes hinted at experimental systems, perhaps even weapons beyond known science. "What species builds such a thing?" whispered one officer. "What enemy do they fear so greatly?" Admiral Sarach did not answer. He studied the image, his mind turning. He had seen many alien vessels before, but never one that seemed to radiate such grim purpose. It was as if the ship itself was alive with memory, carrying a history written in metal and fire. At the far end of the chamber, young cadets whispered nervously. "Perhaps they are like us," one said, "guardians of an empire." "No," another replied, shaking his head. "This ship is not a guardian. It is a survivor." Their words reached Sarach's ears, and he felt the weight of them. Survivor. Yes, that was what it looked like. When the first encrypted signals from within the ship flickered across the Zorath screens, tension rose. The codes were strange, fragmented as if the vessel itself carried recordings of past battles. Voices in an alien tongue, harsh but determined, echoed through the speakers. Transmissions, Aerith explained, stored in the databanks. Perhaps a record of its journeys, the voices repeated, distorted by time. Cries of alarm, orders shouted, engines roaring, weapons firing. Then silence. Then again another fragment of battle. It was as though the ship's very walls remembered war. Some of the crew stepped back, unsettled. Never before had they encountered a vessel that felt like a monument. Admiral Sarach stood tall. His mind raced, but his voice remained steady. Do not stop the scan. We must learn what lies within. This vessel is unlike anything we have ever faced. The chamber quieted. Every officer knew the truth. Whatever this species was, they were not weak. They were not careless. They were shaped by something harsher than the Zorath had ever known. And for the first time in many years, the Zorath fleet felt something rare. Not superiority. Not pride, but the first touch of fear. The Zorath fleet hovered in silence, their warships surrounding the strange vessel at a respectful distance. From the outside, the human warship remained motionless, like a drifting giant in the dark sea of space. Its thick armor plates reflected little light, giving it the appearance of a black mountain floating against the stars. Inside the Zorath flagship, the command chamber glowed with pale blue light from the scanners. Admiral Sarach stood at the center, his sharp eyes locked on the holographic projection of the alien vessel. He could not look away. Every detail uncovered by the sensors seemed more troubling than the last. Report, Sarach ordered, his voice firm. Lieutenant Aerith, still leading the scanning team, adjusted his instruments. The deeper we scan, the stranger it becomes, Admiral. The armor is not only thick, but layered with multiple alloys. It appears to be designed to resist energy blasts, kinetic strikes, and even chemical corrosion. He paused as if uncertain of his next words. It is overbuilt beyond reason. No Zorath engineer would ever approve such waste. But here, waste does not seem to exist. Everything serves one purpose, survival. The chamber grew quiet. The Zorath prided themselves on efficiency, on elegant solutions that balanced speed, strength, and beauty. This ship did not care for elegance. It was raw, practical, merciless in design. As the scans continued, new details emerged. The holographic display highlighted massive compartments hidden deep within the vessel. Power readings spiked irregularly as systems activated and deactivated on strange cycles. Energy signatures suggest multiple reactors, Aerith explained. But they are not arranged like ours. Each reactor functions as if it were independent yet connected. If one is destroyed, the others keep running. An officer muttered in disbelief. Redundant systems on that scale? Entire fleets could be powered with less. Why would they need so much energy? Perhaps, Aerith replied quietly, because they expect to lose part of the ship during battle. The words sent a ripple through the chamber. Expecting to lose part of the ship and still continue fighting? No Zorath vessel was built with such grim calculations in mind. Admiral Sarach folded his hands behind his back. Show me the weapons. The projection shifted, focusing on the outer hull. The alien warship bristled with weapon mounts, long cannon barrels, missile pods hidden under armored covers, and energy turrets spread across its surface. Aerith's voice grew tense. There are too many. Far too many. By my count, 3 times the weapons of a Zorath battleship of similar size. Each weapon system is overpowered for its range. They are built for destructive force, not balance. The officers stared at the display. Even the youngest cadets, who often admired raw power, looked uneasy. Such firepower is not logical, one commander said. This ship alone could reduce entire fleets. No species should need such destruction. But deep inside, every officer was asking the same question. What kind of enemies would force a species to build such a vessel? The scanners pressed further. More hidden layers were uncovered. Behind the weapons, storage bays appeared. The bays were packed with ammunition, missiles, projectiles, reserves of energy cells. The sheer volume made the Zorath gasp. It carries supplies for years of battle, Aerith said. Not days, not weeks, years. This ship was not designed for patrols or short campaigns. It was designed for wars without end. Whispers broke out around the chamber. The Zorath had fought wars, yes, but always in controlled bursts, conquests that lasted seasons, not lifetimes. They could not imagine designing a ship to fight endlessly, as though war was the natural state of existence. Sirach's gaze hardened. Continue deeper. The scanners pierced through the armored hull, sliding into the inner chambers of the warship. Strange patterns appeared. Corridors, compartments, and structures that did not match Zorath designs. Life support systems detected, Aerith said, but not simple ones. They are massive, spread across the ship in layers. Entire sections are devoted to recycling air and water. Even with heavy losses, these systems could continue functioning. Redundant reactors, redundant weapons, redundant life support, Sirach murmured. This ship is prepared to be broken apart and still survive. Another officer asked quietly, Admiral, do you believe this species lives constantly in fear of destruction? No one answered. But the silence itself was heavy with agreement. Then the scanners revealed something unexpected. Admiral, Aerith said slowly, there are encrypted signals coming from the inner databanks. Records, they are fragmented. Should I attempt to decode them? Do it, Sirach ordered. The data came in bursts, distorted images, corrupted files, half-heard voices. They played across the holographic screens like ghosts. A voice shouted in an alien tongue. Explosions thundered. Metal tore. Another voice, calm but firm, issued orders. Then silence. Another fragment appeared. Lights flashing, alarms wailing, desperate messages calling for reinforcement. The crew leaned closer. Even without full translation, the meaning was clear. These were recordings of battle after battle, each one etched into the ship's memory. Is it a library? One officer whispered. No, Aerith said. His voice trembled. It is a survivor's record. The ship itself carries the history of its struggles. The weight of realization sank into the room. The Zorath had studied many alien ships. Some were proud vessels built for glory. Others were fragile explorers built for discovery. But this ship was different. It was not proud. It was not fragile. It was desperate. It was relentless. Every layer of armor, every redundant system, every weapon, every recording told the same story. This species had fought endlessly and had survived by preparing for the worst. Sirach closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the collective, their long empire of peace enforced by superiority. He thought of how they saw themselves as the masters of the galaxy, untouchable. Now facing this ship, he felt a rare and unfamiliar sensation, doubt. Hours passed and the chamber remained tense. At last, Aerith spoke again. Admiral, there is something more. The scans suggest large internal compartments, too large for simple storage. I believe they are habitation zones. Sirach frowned. For soldiers? No, Aerith replied. The design is different, softer. It suggests comfort, protection. These are not military quarters. They may be living spaces for civilians. The chamber erupted in shock. Civilians? On a warship of this scale? Aerith continued. If my readings are correct, then this vessel is not only a weapon, it is also a home. Perhaps even a city traveling through the void. The idea was staggering. A warship carrying not just warriors but families. A ship designed not only to fight but to protect life itself. The young cadets whispered again, their voices uneasy. One ship to carry families? That means their worlds must be unsafe. Or they have lost worlds before, and now they carry their people with them. Imagine living your life on a fortress built for endless war. Their words sent a chill through the older officers. The idea of a species forced to carry civilians on warships painted a picture darker than any they had imagined. Admiral Sirach spoke at last, his voice deep and steady. This ship is not just a vessel of war. It is a monument to survival. Every plate of armor, every weapon, every compartment is a message. This species does not trust peace. They prepare for war as if it is the only truth of existence. He looked around at his officers. Some shifted uneasily under his gaze. Others stared silently at the projection of the alien ship. For the first time, Sirach continued, I do not know if the collective is prepared for what we have found. We may have discovered a species that has endured trials greater than ours. And if they built one ship like this, he let the thought hang unspoken. What if there were more? The alien warship remained silent, floating in the darkness, its true crew hidden. But the Zorath now saw it differently. It was no longer just an unknown vessel. It was a mirror held up to their assumptions. a warning that not all species walked the same easy path to power. And though no weapon had fired, though no battle had begun, the Zorath fleet felt as if they had already lost something. They had lost the certainty that they were alone at the top. The Zorath flagship was quiet. The only sound was the steady hum of the scanners as they dug deeper into the alien vessel's systems. Every officer stood tense, their eyes locked on the holographic projection. Admiral Sarek's voice broke the silence. What do the databanks show now? Lieutenant Aerith hesitated before answering. Admiral, the records are vast. They are not only logs of the ship, but fragments of older vessels. It seems this ship carries the memories of an entire fleet. The chamber stirred. The idea was strange to the Zorath. Why would a single vessel carry the records of many? Unless those other ships no longer existed. Display what you can, Sarek commanded. The projection changed. Images flickered across the air like ghosts. Blurred scenes of battle, flashing lights, shadows of strange ships exploding in fire. The voices came next, harsh and strong, though the language was still foreign. Some words repeated. Orders shouted again and again. Hold the line. Push forward. Do not break. Even without full translation, the meaning was clear. Commands spoken in desperation. Aerith explained as the fragments played. These records span centuries, maybe longer. Each is a piece of history from different battles. The same species always fighting, always surviving, the officers whispered to one another. A timeline of endless war, a civilization that never knew rest. The Zorath had always believed war was a tool, a step toward peace. But this species seemed to live with war as a constant companion. One recording grew clearer. The projection showed an alien world under bombardment. Ships fell through the atmosphere, flames trailing behind them. The surface erupted with explosions. Through the noise, a voice cried out, strong and unshaken. Evacuate the children first. The Zorath officers froze. Even without translation, the urgency in the tone was unmistakable. They recognized a command given not for soldiers but for civilians. Admiral, Aerith said softly, this confirms what we suspected. These warships do not carry only warriors. They carry families. They carry their future within the hull. The thought weighed heavily on every mind in the chamber. Another recording appeared. This one showed a fleet surrounded. Countless enemy vessels pressed in, forming a wall of fire. The human voices rose in a chorus of determination. Weapons fired again and again, even as ships were torn apart. The Zorath watched silently. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, yet they did not surrender. They fought until the last transmission went dark. One young cadet whispered what all of them were thinking. They are not conquerors. They are survivors. Hours passed as more fragments played. Some were brief. A single scream, a flash of light, the crack of weapons. Others were longer, telling stories of desperate defense, of fleets trying to hold lines against overwhelming odds. The Zorath began to piece together a picture. The humans had not built their warships for glory or conquest. They had built them to endure endless waves of enemies, enemies that never seemed to stop coming. But the most unsettling part was this. In every recording, despite the horror of destruction, the humans endured. They always endured. Admiral Sarek finally spoke, his voice low. What enemy forced them into this existence? No one answered. The scanners showed no clear identity of the foes. The records were fragmented, distorted. Strange ship designs appeared in the projections, but each was different. Some insect-like, others mechanical, others massive and hulking. Aerith studied the images with wide eyes. It is not one enemy, Admiral. It is many, different species, different fleets. Over centuries, perhaps millennia, these humans fought them all. The chamber grew colder. The Zorath had faced rivals, yes, but never so many. Never endlessly. One of the commanders spoke cautiously. If this is true, then this species did not simply survive one war. They survived an age of war, an age that never ended. Another officer added, and if they fought against so many, then where are those enemies now? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. If the humans fought endless wars and still survived, then perhaps their enemies had not. Perhaps the humans had outlasted them all. The next recording confirmed their unease. The projection showed a smaller human vessel surrounded by enemy fire. The ship shuddered, its hull breaking apart, yet its captain's voice rang through the chaos. If we fall, let our memory be carried forward. Let them know we stood even here. Then the ship exploded. Silence followed, but the words lingered. Aerith looked at the Admiral. That is why these databanks are so vast. Each ship passes its memory to the next. Every battle, every loss, every survival, this ship carries not only weapons but the history of its people. The Zorath officers stared at the dark hologram of the human vessel. It was no longer just a ship to them. It was an archive of suffering. A library of survival. The cadets whispered nervously again. How can any species live like this? Perhaps they do not live. Perhaps they only survive. Or perhaps surviving is what they call living. Their voices trembled, not with mockery, but with respect mixed with fear. Admiral Sarach turned back to the display. His thoughts were heavy. For centuries, the collective had believed itself unmatched. Their fleets were the greatest, their technology superior. Yet this ship, this single vessel, carried a story greater than their empire's entire history. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. What does a species become when war shapes them for so long? When every generation grows knowing only struggle? No one answered. Then, a final fragment played. The projection filled with light, the view from the deck of a human warship as it engaged an enemy fleet. The recording shook with the force of weapons firing, alarms blaring, crew shouting. And then, in the middle of it all, a single voice spoke calmly. We are humanity. We do not yield. If we fall, we rise again. If we are broken, we rebuild. Remember this, no darkness can erase us. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Every Zorath officer felt a chill crawl through them. Aerith broke the silence. Admiral, I do not believe they see war as a curse. I believe they see it as a truth. They do not ask for peace. They prepare for survival. Sarach looked around at his officers. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. The youngest ones trembled while the older commanders clenched their jaws. The Admiral raised his head, his voice steady but heavy. We must accept this truth. We are not the only masters of the stars. There exists a species forged in endless war. A species that carries its history like a weapon. He turned back to the projection of the silent human warship, drifting in the void, unaware or perhaps unconcerned that it was being scanned. And now, he whispered, they are here. The Zorath officers stood in silence, each lost in thought. Some felt fear, some felt awe, but all of them understood one thing. They had looked into the echoes of endless war, and what they saw changed their view of the galaxy forever. The humans were not just survivors, they were something far greater. The Zorath fleet drifted cautiously, their long-range scanners still probing the massive human warship. The holographic display hummed softly, a silent heartbeat echoing through the command chamber of the flagship. Admiral Sarach stood motionless, staring at the projections as though trying to read the soul of the alien vessel. Lieutenant Aerith had been working without pause for hours, carefully decoding the deeper layers of the ship's databanks. What they had seen so far had already unsettled the officers. A vessel designed not only to endure war, but to carry the memory of countless battles. Yet the next layer revealed something no one in the chamber expected. Admiral, Aerith said slowly, his voice tense, there are internal systems I cannot fully describe. They house life forms, not soldiers, not personnel trained for battle, life forms that are being preserved in stasis. A murmur ran through the room. Explain, Sarach ordered. Aerith adjusted the scanners, zooming in on the interior sections of the human ship. Cryogenic pods, rows upon rows, each containing what appears to be civilians, adults, children, infants. The ship is not only a war machine, it is a mobile sanctuary. The officers stared at the projection. They had imagined human resilience, but this was beyond imagination. A warship carrying the very people it was meant to protect. A floating city armored against the void itself. One of the younger commanders muttered under his breath, they fight not only for survival, but for life. For their families. Sarach's mandibles tightened. So it is true. These are not reckless warriors. They are a species shaped to endure, to defend, to preserve life at any cost. Aerith continued. The cryopods are connected to life support systems that are redundant and independent. Even if half the ship is destroyed, the others would continue functioning. It is as if the vessel was designed to survive long enough to protect all those inside. The chamber was silent. The weight of understanding pressed down on every officer. They were trained to analyze, to calculate, to control their fear. But the scale of human preparation was staggering. "Do we continue?" asked one officer hesitantly. "We are already far beyond what our sensors can fully comprehend. We risk provoking them if we go deeper." Sarach's eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the human ship. "Knowledge is our advantage. We cannot retreat yet. We must see the full extent of what this species is capable of." The scanners penetrated deeper, revealing more details of the internal cryo compartments. Each pod was a perfect capsule, insulated and monitored. Life signs, energy consumption, temperature, all meticulously maintained. The sheer number of pods was overwhelming. The ship could carry thousands of civilians without compromising combat readiness. One of the cadets whispered, "They are prepared to survive wars that could last decades. Perhaps centuries." Aerith nodded grimly. "Yes, this is not a vessel built for a single battle. It is built to outlast entire eras of conflict." Another officer, visibly shaken, asked, "How can a species survive like this across such endless war?" Sarach's gaze did not waver from the projection. "By refusing to surrender. By refusing to yield. By valuing life even while fighting death itself." The Zorath scanners now focused on the ship's command systems. Even though they could not translate the human interface completely, they detected multiple autonomous AI modules. These systems coordinated life support, weapons, navigation, and communication simultaneously. "It is self-regulating," Aerith explained. "Even if the crew is incapacitated, the ship continues to function. Protecting the people inside is its primary directive. Everything else, combat maneuvering, is secondary." The officers exchanged glances. Their minds were beginning to grasp the horrifying efficiency of the humans. A species whose every vessel was designed to fight endlessly, preserve life, and endure unimaginable losses. "Have the humans responded yet?" a young cadet asked. Sarach shook his head. "Not yet, and perhaps that is the most unnerving part. They may already know we are scanning, yet they remain passive. Observant perhaps, calculating. They do not panic. They do not act impulsively. That is discipline shaped by survival." Aerith adjusted the scanners to focus on a small section of the ship, curious about the human engineering. A massive energy spike appeared in the readings. "What is that?" asked one of the older officers, eyeing the display nervously. "It is a defensive system," Aerith explained. "Hidden layers of shields and countermeasures. This ship could survive direct hits from multiple capital-class weapons. And yet," he hesitated, "even if attacked, the cryopods would remain safe. The system prioritizes preservation of life above all else." The cadets gasped. One whispered, "They could lose the entire ship in battle and still save their people." Sarach's voice was calm but carried the weight of realization. "That is precisely what we are witnessing. Humanity does not gamble. They prepare for absolute loss, ensuring their survival against all odds." Suddenly, the holographic projection flickered. The alien crew tensed. The human warship remained motionless. Yet the energy spikes in the scanners suggested subtle activity, internal systems adjusting, recalibrating. Aerith's mandibles clicked nervously. "The ship may be aware of our scan. Its defensive protocols are responding subtly, without direct action. We are being observed." A chill ran through the command chamber. The Zorath were accustomed to fear of enemies, but this was different. No weapons had been fired. No threat had been made. Yet the sense of power emanating from the human vessel was undeniable. Sarach finally spoke. "This species has endured war for so long and built vessels that do not merely fight. They think, they protect, they survive. This is not just a warship. It is a statement of existence." The officers were silent, letting the enormity of the statement sink in. The scanners revealed more compartments connected to the cryopods. Some contained medical facilities, storage of food and water, and advanced environmental controls. The ship was a self-contained ecosystem, capable of sustaining life in the harshest conditions. "Entire worlds could fall," one officer whispered. "Yet this ship would survive." "Humanity survives," Aerith nodded grimly. "And that is the key. Each ship carries the lessons of the last. Failures, victories, losses, all stored in databanks. The humans ensure that no mistake is ever repeated. They evolve through their history of war, embedding knowledge into the very fabric of their vessels." The chamber was quiet again, each officer lost in thought. They had expected a simple alien warship, perhaps advanced, perhaps dangerous. But what they found was something beyond comprehension. A species that had transformed struggle into endurance, destruction into protection, and fear into preparation. After hours of scanning, Aerith finally looked up. "Admiral, I believe we have reached the limit. We now understand the scale of their design and the depth of their preparation. Any further intrusion could be dangerous. We have glimpsed the essence of their philosophy." Sarach nodded. "And what is that philosophy?" Aerith answered softly. "Survival, protection, resilience, and the will to endure no matter the cost." The officers remained silent. Even the cadets understood. Humanity had not merely survived the horrors of war, they had thrived in spite of it. Every design choice, every layer of armor, every weapon and cryopod was proof of a species determined to endure, no matter what the galaxy threw at them. Sarach's gaze lingered on the holographic projection. They are not reckless. They are not naive. They are prepared for everything, and yet they carry hope within them. Life itself is their weapon. The room fell silent. Even the most seasoned commanders felt the weight of the revelation. They were witnessing the breaking point, not of humanity, but of their own assumptions. For centuries, the Zorath had considered themselves supreme. They had assumed that fear, power, and technology alone defined dominance. But the humans had proven otherwise: endurance, protection of life, and the will to survive were forces no weapon could fully counter. The human warship floated silently, a fortress, a sanctuary, a monument. The Zorath fleet stared, unsure whether to fear, respect, or both. And deep within the chamber, the cadets whispered, "We have underestimated them. We have truly underestimated humanity." The Zorath fleet hovered silently around the colossal human warship. After hours of scanning, the fleet now fully understood the scale of what they were facing. The vessel was no longer a mere unknown target. It was a fortress, a library of survival, and a sanctuary for life. Every officer aboard the Zorath flagship felt a mixture of fear, awe, and respect. Admiral Sarach stood at the center of the command chamber, his eyes fixed on the holographic projection. The weight of what they had discovered pressed heavily on him. For centuries, the Zorath had believed they were unmatched in the galaxy, the ultimate arbiters of war and survival. But this single human vessel shattered that belief. Lieutenant Aerith, still monitoring the ship's systems, spoke quietly. "Admiral, we are receiving subtle activity from their internal systems. They are aware of our scan, but they are not responding aggressively. Yet I detect defensive protocols being readied." Sarach nodded slowly. "They do not act impulsively. They calculate, observe, and prepare. That is what makes them dangerous. Knowledge is their weapon as much as armor or cannons." The human ship remained still, its engines silent, yet its sensors began to pulse faintly in response to the Zorath scan. On board the Zorath fleet, tension grew. Every officer knew instinctively that this was no ordinary species. The humans had endured endless wars, carried their history into every vessel, and safeguarded life above all else. A junior officer whispered to the commander beside him, "Do you think they could destroy our fleet?" The commander's jaw tightened. "Not just destroy us, they could survive it. Even if we strike, this ship and those inside will endure." Sarach's gaze did not waver from the projection. "And that is the point. We are not facing reckless warriors. We are facing a species that has transformed struggle into survival, loss into preparation, and determination into armor." The Zorath officers watched in silence as Aerith's scanners revealed more. Hidden compartments activated, shield matrices hummed softly, and energy pulses traveled through the ship's core. It was as if the warship itself was awakening, not to attack but to assert its presence. "One thing is clear," Aerith said, his mandibles clicking nervously. "If this ship engages, it will not fight like any enemy we have faced. It will fight to preserve life. Every weapon, every system, every protocol is designed for that purpose. And it will endure at all costs." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The Zorath had trained for combat against enemies that valued conquest, aggression, and power. They had never faced an opponent that prioritized life itself as a weapon. Suddenly, the projection flickered. The human ship's engines powered on, a subtle but undeniable vibration spreading through the hologram. The fleet could sense the energy radiating from it, powerful, focused, controlled. It was not a threat in the conventional sense, but it was a statement. Aerith's voice trembled slightly. "Admiral, they are awake. They know we are here." A hush fell over the chamber. The Zorath officers realized that the humans were not merely passive. They were aware, calculating, and ready for action, but not with reckless violence. Every response was precise, deliberate, and designed to ensure survival. Sarok's eyes narrowed. "We have seen their weapons, their history, their protective systems, and now we know that any engagement could be catastrophic. They do not gamble, they endure, and that endurance makes them formidable beyond measure." The younger cadets whispered among themselves, unable to hide their fear. "We thought we were the strongest," one said. "But this is different. They are not just strong, they are eternal in a sense." Another added quietly, "They fight to survive, yes, but they protect what is dear to them. That makes them unstoppable in a way we cannot comprehend." Sarok allowed himself a rare nod. "They are not invincible. Nothing is. But they are a species that cannot be underestimated. Never." On the bridge, the senior officers reviewed the projection again. The human warship's energy pulses grew stronger, subtle adjustments made to its shields and life support systems. It was a living machine, alive with purpose, silently warning the Zorath fleet, "Do not underestimate us." Aerith's sensors picked up new data. Rows of cryopods lit briefly as life support systems cycled. Families inside the ship were preserved, safe, and ready to awaken when needed. The realization hit the Zorath with full force. This vessel was more than a weapon. It was a floating civilization, armored against time, space, and war. One commander whispered, "Even if we destroy the outer layers, the people survive. The knowledge survives. They endure." The tension in the command chamber reached its peak. No officer moved. Every calculation, every past assumption, every notion of superiority felt fragile against the reality before them. The humans were not just survivors, they were guardians of life and history, carrying the memory of generations into the void. Sarok finally spoke, his voice measured but heavy with meaning. "We came here to study, to understand, perhaps even to assert dominance. But we are not studying a weak species. We are observing a force that has shaped itself through centuries of war, refining survival into an art, and that is terrifying." Aerith's sensors detected more subtle activity. Defensive turrets shifting slightly, shield matrices strengthening, and power redistribution through the ship's engines. The human warship had not fired a shot, yet its presence alone reshaped the balance of fear. The Admiral turned to his officers. "Our mission here changes. We are not engaging in combat. We are retreating with knowledge and respect. Humanity is not merely to be feared. They are to be respected, studied, and understood. Their endurance, their philosophy, their will to survive. All of it makes them a species unlike any we have encountered." The young cadets listened in awe. Fear remained, yes, but it was now tempered with reverence. Humanity was not a mere opponent. They were a testament to what life could achieve when shaped by endless struggle. As the Zorath fleet slowly retreated, the human warship remained still. Its engines powered down, its sensors quiet once more. It did not chase. It did not fire, it waited. Every officer on the Zorath ships understood. This species did not need to strike to command respect. Its very existence was a statement. Aerith whispered, "Admiral, they could destroy us, yet they choose not to. Their restraint is as powerful as any weapon." Sarok nodded. "And that is precisely why they terrify us. Not because of what they can do, but because of what they will endure." The fleet passed beyond the edge of scanning range, leaving the human warship behind. Silence filled the Zorath command chamber, heavier than any sound of battle. Officers stared at the fading holographic projection, each lost in thought. Finally, Sarok spoke. "The galaxy is no longer ours to assume dominance. Humanity has shown us that survival, resilience, and protection of life are as formidable as any fleet or weapon. We feared them, but now we must also respect them." One of the senior commanders whispered almost to himself, "We underestimated them, and we will never do so again." Sarok's voice softened, almost a murmur. "A species that has endured so much yet still carries hope within its vessels. That is the greatest force of all. Let the galaxy remember, do not provoke humanity. Do not underestimate them. And above all, do not ignore their endurance." The Zorath fleet moved away, leaving the human warship to its quiet patrol. The ship floated silently, a fortress, a sanctuary, a living monument to survival. It carried within it generations of knowledge, history, and life itself. The humans had not fought, yet their message was clear. They endure, they protect, and they will not be underestimated. For the Zorath, the lesson was profound. They had faced many enemies, yet never one like this. A species that had transformed endless war into a tool of survival, and survival into a force that commanded respect and fear alike. Even as the stars stretched before them, the Zorath could not shake the weight of what they had witnessed. Humanity was more than a species. It was a testament to resilience, a declaration to the galaxy, and the memory of that single ship would remain in their minds forever. The humans had not struck. They had not fired a shot. And yet they had left the Zorath fleet horrified and in awe.